Hi, today I'll talk about my childhood. I don't think I've mentioned my childhood prior to when I was forced to get married at 16. So I was born in Bangladesh, in Mulvi Bazaar in Bangladesh, in a village called Horinachong. My grandparents lived there, my maternal uncles, aunts, cousins, they all lived there. And I was the third daughter. I had two older sisters. My older sister was 6 years older than me, and then my second older sister was 4 years older than me. And when I was born, I was apparently a very bubbly child. I was very chatty. I picked up things very, very quickly. I was actually born under very traumatic circumstances because I was overdue by about 2 weeks, and when I was born, I was shriveled up like a prune, apparently, and I couldn't suckle. I was struggling to survive ultimately because I couldn't suckle, I couldn't do anything. So my mother mashed up bananas and fed me mashed up bananas in order to keep me alive. Then at about 6 months, I was crawling on the floor, I was playing on the floor, my mother was busy cooking, and I'm not sure where my sisters were, but a scorpion came out from the rafters at the top, and it suddenly fell in front of me. And as a baby, I was fascinated by this weird creature crawling about in front of me, and I reached my hand out to touch it, and it stung me. And apparently, so I'm told when the story is related to me, that my hand went all blue and numb, and nobody knew what to do, nobody knew how to save me. There was an old imam in a village near us, and apparently he was quite famous for scorpion stings, for healing scorpion stings and saving people. So someone rushed to get him to come and save me, and they tied my hand up with something to stop the venom from spreading all over my body. And then there were some leaves, apparently, that are good for soothing. So I'm not sure if they're ivy or what kind of leaves they were, but apparently they used for stings and things, venom and things. So he did some prayers, and he read some du'as, and he blew my hand, and he did whatever he needed to do in order to keep me alive. And I did, I was fine. By the age of sort of a year, 18 months, I was chatting away. I was just so cute and so adored by everybody. Like at this point, I had two older sisters. I was the youngest of the three. And everybody around, everybody in our extended family, everybody in the village just absolutely adored me. I was just so cute and so bubbly. They'd come and just talk to me, just to hear me talking, because I sort of came out with all sorts. And I see that in my children too. My younger two are very chatty, are very bubbly. They, very ahead of their times, ahead of their peers. They fly through all their milestones and pick up things so quickly. So I can imagine myself as a child being very similar to them. So that's possibly why they're like that too. And then just, people would just want to talk to me all the time, just make me chat, make me say things. My eldest uncle, so my mother had two brothers, and she has three sisters. So they're four sisters and two brothers. And my eldest uncle, his wife, he was newly married, and his wife adored me. She, and I seemed to adore her apparently. And she, she was always mollycoddling me, always hugging me, and making me talk. And then my granny would come and tease me and say, when I came from my house, I'd come and say, where's my auntie gone? And she teased me and she said, we've thrown her away, and that we've thrown her in the pond or something silly like that. So I would get really angry and upset and say, no, go and get my auntie, I want my auntie, and things. We used to call her mummy, because mummy means mama is our uncle, and then mummy is our auntie. So I was like, no, I want my mummy, where's my mummy gone, and stuff. So so I was just absolutely adored. I got so much attention. And then we moved to the UK. So when I was 2.5 years old, or sort of just under 2.5 years old, we moved to the UK because my dad was already in the UK. He'd come over as a teenager. One of his uncles had pretended to him, he was his son, and then brought him over so he could work, because he was the only child. His mother had died, and then his father had remarried, so he had a stepmother, and he had a stepbrother and two stepsisters, and they were absolutely awful to him. They were so vile to him. They just they used to make him work out in the fields all day. When he got home at the end of the day, they wouldn't give him food. Apparently he used to climb up a tree and just used like a radio to listen to music, and he'd just be crying and listen to his music up in a tree because he just wasn't fed, he wasn't looked after, he just made to work all day. Awful existence. They were just so vile. And they sent him to the UK to work for them, to earn money and to send money back for them. So he came to the UK as a teenager, and then he went back and got married to my mother. So in 1981, July 1981, we came over to the UK. So it was me and my two sisters and my mother. We came to join my dad in the UK. And I remember various different houses that we've lived in throughout our lives. So there was our first house that I remember when I was growing up, which was near our school. So we used to go to St Mary's School, and we used to have a house near there, right next to it, literally on the doorstep, and things. And in this house, I was 3 years old, and I remember all of a sudden, like, I've come to the UK, and there's just nobody about, nobody to talk to me, nobody wanted me around. My sisters didn't want me around. I was just a nuisance to them. I was just, getting in their way. They couldn't play because of me. So they would always tell me to go away. They'd always say, get lost, go away, and push me away all the time. And my mother was pregnant again, expecting her fourth child, which was my sister. And she was just always ill. She was always fainting. I'd find her faint everywhere, like passed out everywhere. So I remember the telephone receiver hanging off, because they used to have the wired receivers at the time. It was hanging off the receiver in the hallway. And my mum was laid out on the floor. So I, as a young child, I ran to get my older sisters and said, look, something's happened to mummy. And they would come and put the receiver back, and they'd, sort her out. In other places she was, she'd fainted here, there and everywhere. So at 3, nobody wanted to know. I was just a nuisance. So at one point, I made my own game. So I would, we had a bed, I think it was my bed, next to the bedroom window and the windowsill. So I would climb up on the windowsill and I'd jump onto my bed. So it was a game that I'd invented for myself to keep myself occupied. And one day the window was quite a large window on the side, and it was open, and I was jumping off the windowsill onto the bed, and I fell backwards. And I actually remember falling backwards. I remember the grass underneath. I remember the concrete pathway, and I remember my mum running from the sitting room. There was a visitor there, and she ran from the sitting room and she picked me up and she took me back indoors. She could phone for an ambulance. She phoned my dad. There's just panic everywhere. The brown cot at Southampton General Hospital in the children's department, I remember being in that cot. I remember the teddy bear activity toy that they gave me to play with. I've often looked for that toy, when my older children were younger. I've kind of like tried to find that same toy to try and buy it for them, because I remember these things. I remember my mum stayed with me, but I was fine. I was absolutely fine. There was just nothing wrong with me. I didn't have a broken bone, nothing. It was like angels had carried me down and laid me on the floor. So I was absolutely fine. So I just stayed in for observations, and then I was sent home. I've done all sorts. I've swallowed coins in the past, so I was given some coins to play with. I don't recall exactly how old I was, but there were about 5 pennies or something, 5 different pennies, and I'd swallowed them. I had to go to hospital to be checked. So I was quite a mischievous child, I guess. I was always up to something. I think I was very inquisitive, so I always wanted to learn things. I've always had a thirst for learning, so even as a young child, I would want to know things, I would want to learn things, I would want to, investigate things. When I was in first school, Eid Day, so I was about 5, and it was Eid Day, and we barely ever had, we were quite poor, so we barely ever had any new clothes. So Eid Day was like the only day that we actually had a new outfit to wear. So I had this lovely burgundy dress, and it had these flary layers, like a Spanish dancer's dress that they wear, the Rara dresses, I think they're called, and with the different layers, and it was gorgeous. I loved it. And mine was burgundy, and I think my sisters had navy blue, so both of them had navy blue, and I had a burgundy one. And my mum had said the night before that we weren't going to be going to school because it was Eid. We had to take the day off. And I needed to go to school to show my dress. I mean, it's a gorgeous dress. I wanted everybody at school to see my dress. So what happened was, in the morning, I woke up in the morning before, everybody was still asleep, and I quickly got dressed And I let myself out, and the school was literally 2 minutes away on our doorstep. So I just went to the school gate and I just stood there and waited. And it seemed like I was waiting a long time. There was nobody around. It was, empty. The whole place was empty. After, what seemed like ages, the caretaker came and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I've come for school. I've come to go to school." So he took me into the office, and I think they rang my mother from the office, and they said, "Look, your daughter's here." And they must have come and taken me, and everybody was just laughing, that I was just desperate to go to school, and it was to show off my dress. I don't know if they knew that at the time, but they were just laughing that it was funny that I wanted to go to school. And I just wanted to show my dress. I just, had this beautiful dress that I barely ever had new clothes, and this was a gorgeous dress that I had that I wanted to show them. So then the next day, when I went in, I was allowed to go in the next day, and then I wore my dress and I showed it off, and they made a big issue out of it, and they had me standing at the front of the class to show everybody my dress and to tell them about Eid. The other thing I remember actually when I was around that age, so I was a little bit younger then actually, I was possibly in nursery this age, and it was the Christmas Nativity play, and I was Angel Gabriel. So I was one of the key roles. I had a key role in the Christmas Nativity play, and we were at St Mary's Church, and we were performing in front of all the parents, all the teachers, a huge audience, and I was centre stage as Angel Gabriel, all dressed up in my white gown and my halo, and I had the other angels around me, stood on the front stage, and I was so nervous. It was so embarrassing. I think I had stage fright, and I just froze, and it was awful. And I wet myself, and I just froze there. I was 4 years old possibly, and the girl next to me must have realised. I don't know how she realised. So she's picking up my dress, she's lifting my gown up on centre stage in St Mary's Church on the altar, showing everybody that I'd wet myself. It was just so embarrassing. And I was just so embarrassed. So then my teacher, bless her, she was so sweet. She said, "Never mind, it's okay, these things happen." So she picked me up and she actually put me on the back of her neck. Because I was a petite child, I was only 4 years old, I was quite a petite, small child. She didn't bother her that I just wet myself. And she picked me up, put me on the back of her neck, and then she, as I say, we lived near the school and we lived near the church, so she just walked down to my house, and she just took me home and said, "Look, she just had a bit of an accident." And I think I was worried that I'd get into trouble or something. I didn't know at that time what people would say, but they were okay. They just laughed about it and said, "God, you wet yourself in the middle of a church, That's awful." But yeah, I still laugh about that. It's quite funny. But I do get so nervous, I find. So even doing these videos is so nerve-wracking for me. I mean, I'm getting better at it as I go, but the beginning, I couldn't even do a video call with a friend. A few weeks ago, if you'd asked me to do a video call, I'd be like, "No way, I can't do a video call." And then I started practicing my videos, and I seem to be, I'm so much better now. I can do it. I don't get stage fright, or I don't get nervous as much as I used to. I just remember doing that. And I think another thing I remember from my childhood was, like I say, we barely had any dresses, we barely had any outfits, barely had anything new. So I always had hand-me-down clothes from my sisters, being the third one, I always got their clothes. So I went to Kingsland Market once with my mum. I think I was about 5, 6 years old, possibly 7. And there was a second-hand bin with clothes there that second-hand clothes. And there was a Victorian dress, and it was a green and cream colour. So it had like little ruffles around the sleeves, I think. But I've always had this penchant about Victorian era, and the dresses and the costumes were just so gorgeous. So there was this little dress in there that was my size, and it was 20p. And I remember my mum saying, "Do you want it?" And I said yes. And she brought it for me, and it was only 20p. I love that dress. I think I only actually managed to wear it once. I think it was on a dress-up day at school, and I wore it. But I didn't get around to wearing it at all, and I just grew out of it. Probably got passed down to my sister, I can't remember now. But yeah, those were possibly the nice memories that I have of childhood. I remember in secondary school, I was never given any clothes. I always had hand-me-downs. But for some reason, my sister, who's just below me, who's 4 years younger, she was the favourite. So she was the adored child. My dad and mum loved her to bits. She was a lot darker in skin colour. But they called her their black daughter. They called her Rani, which is queen. So they loved her to bits. They'd use the dark skin as an endearing thing, that she's their dark daughter, but they love her to bits and stuff. And my brother as well, he was very much adored by my mum and dad. So those two were the favourites. But I just remember feeling very discriminated against because I was in secondary school. I just started secondary school, or it may have been the last year of my middle school. So I was going swimming and I didn't have a swimming costume. And my sister, who's 4 years older than me, had a swimming costume that she no longer needed. So my mum had said, well, you have to wear this one. You know, you don't need another one. You can just wear this one. But it was too big for me. It didn't fit. I was 4 years younger than her. I was scrawny. I was, undernourished. I didn't fit it. But she insisted, and it was like a royal blue. It was a nice, bright blue colour, but it just didn't fit me. But no, I wasn't allowed a swimming costume. I had to wear that. There was no choice about it. And then my sister, the one below me, she wanted a swimming costume, but she wasn't even at the right age. Like, if I was 10, 11, she would have been 6 or 7. And so there, she still had a few years to go before she could go swimming. So she didn't even need a swimming costume. But my mum actually went and brought her a brand new swimming costume, just like that, because she said she wanted it. And I was just so shocked. And I don't know, I just felt so gutted that I needed a swimming costume for school. I needed to go swimming. I needed a swimming costume that fit me. She refused to buy me a swimming costume because she said I had my sister's, even though it didn't fit me. And then she goes and buys it for her. And the irony of it was that the swimming costume she bought for her was too big for her because she bought it a bit bigger. But that actually fit me. It was perfect size for me. But they wouldn't let me wear it. And I just don't understand why, if I needed a costume and there was a costume in the house that fitted me, that the other one couldn't even wear yet because she was too small and she wasn't going swimming, she didn't need it, I wasn't allowed to wear it. And the one that I was being forced to wear literally would fall off. So it'd fall off. So what I'd do is I'd wrap it a couple of times around my arms because I had really skinny arms and it was too big and I was embarrassed. You could see my body and stuff. So I would have to wrap the strap around my arm a couple of times just to try and keep it in place. And I think that's when I started realising the difference between, say, me and her, because it's almost like I didn't understand. It just didn't make sense to me. So what I did was I would sneak out her swimming costume and wear it for swimming, and then I'd sneak it back. But being a child, I had no idea that you have to wash these things. You have to dry them. You can't just stick it under a bed. And I was hiding it back under the bed after I wore it. So after a couple of times I'd worn it, it went mouldy and horrible. And they found it. I think they just laughed at me and thought, she had to steal it and wear it. But I just felt so hard done by. I didn't understand it. There was no logic to it. As far as I could see, there was no logic. Like, why would you tell me I can't wear it, but she can wear it, but she can't wear it because she's not old enough, or she doesn't even fit into it, or she's not even going swimming? But I desperately needed it and I wasn't allowed. And even things like uniform and stuff, it was always handed down from my sisters. So I was bullied at school, I was picked on at school, I was called a tramp. All the kids would laugh at me. We weren't bathed much. We had like a bath once a week. That was a palaver because my brother, being the only boy, was allowed a full bath with nice warm clean water, and we weren't allowed. So what we had to do is wait for him to have his bath. He'd play in it, he'd mess about, the bath water would be cold, and then we were told, right, you can go and have your bath now in the water that he's just come out of. That was our bath once a week on a Sunday in my brother's bath water. So you can imagine we probably stunk. So hygiene wasn't at all any level at all. There was just no such thing as hygiene. Clothes were a mess, they were dirty. I'd go to school really dirty and smelly, and the kids would pick on me and bully me and tease me. One of my teachers would actually say to me, look, perhaps you should change your clothes tomorrow, come in new clothes. I remember being about 7 and I didn't have a coat and it was dead of winter. And I went to school in this white summer dress. And I remember it was a white cotton summer dress. It was quite a pretty dress with white strappy sandals and some thin white socks. But no coat, no jumper, no coat, nothing. And I was stood in the concrete of the playground shivering. Just stood there, and it was playtime, and I was absolutely freezing, and I was shivering, and my teeth were chattering away, and I was shaking and shivering. And my teachers complained to my mother. She rang her up and she said, look, she needs a coat. She's come to school, she's got no coat. It's winter, she's freezing cold, she's got no coat. So then I was taken shopping to C&A. We had C&A and Plumbers in town, and I was brought this brand new woolen green coat, and I still remember it. And I still love woolen coats. So every time I buy a winter coat, it's always a woolen coat. And it's usually black these days. I try and change it up a bit these days and try and go for a different colour. But it was a bright green woolen coat, and it was quite one of those long woolen coats that go down to your calf. It was lovely and warm, and I remember wearing it to school and feeling so happy, and I wanted to show it off to everybody because it was possibly the first coat I'd ever had. That wasn't handed me down, I expect. But yeah, so I still have to put up with being bullied and picked on all the time. I mean, I don't know if my sisters were, perhaps they weren't, but for some reason I was, throughout my childhood, throughout school years, even at work, at college, there was always something about me that people just didn't like, that people took offence to. People just felt that they had to pick on me and bully me and laugh at me and humiliate me. I didn't understand. As far as I knew, as far as I can remember, from about the age of 5, I've always helped people. I've always wanted to help people. I think maybe to the point of that I become a know-it-all. Perhaps that's the issue, that when you do know it all, you do come across as a know-it-all because you do know it, but that's not a good trait to have, I expect. So I would be helping all the children. I remember being about 5, helping the child across the table, and the teacher came behind me and smacked me on my bottom because I'd sat up to help the child across the table. But that was just me. I just like helping people. That's just how I am, and I've always liked helping people. 10 years old, I was interpreting for, there was a group of Bengali children that had come from Bangladesh. There was about 3 or 4 of them. And I was almost like given charge of these children, these new children that had come. And I was asked to help them, to speak to them in Bengali and interpret for them. And we went on a school trip. And I think it was Poole and Bransey Island, because I remember the beach. And I think it was when we went to see the peacocks on Bransey Island. And we caught the boat across from Poole. And I was interpreting for them, and I was like, it was great. It was like, I was head of the team, and I had this little team around me, all asking me, questions and things, and sort of like, waiting for my answers and things. So it was good. I just felt like a leader, I guess. Maybe, they say Aries are born leaders, but up until recently, I've never felt that about myself. I've never felt that I'm a born leader. I always felt like I didn't want to take on responsibility. I'd rather have a job like working in Asda or working on the cashier somewhere, where I just go in, do my hours and come home. I didn't want responsibility. I didn't want to have to, be held accountable for things. I didn't want people to come, and I think it was a fear of being shouted at and screamed at and humiliated, because I feel like forever I've always been treated like that. So if I could take a job on that comes with responsibility, I'm responsible for other people, I'm responsible for taking important decisions, then ultimately the fault will lie with me. So if something goes wrong, people will come back to me and shout at me and humiliate me. So for me, I've always avoided responsibility. But I guess that trait has always been in me, that, I am an Aries. And typically, other than that, I would say that I am an Aries through and through in every way. Like, Aries are a ram. They go head first into things. They don't tend to think about things. They will just go head first. And it's like a bull in a china shop sometimes, that you're just not thinking and you will just act. And I've always just acted on impulse, acted according to my heart, how I feel. I lead by emotions, not my head, which often I've been told off for. I have people having a go at me about it. I talk without thinking. But I always do it from my heart. So I will do everything. I will talk, I will speak, I will feel for people, I will try and help people. And it's always with good intention. Like, where my heart is, that's what I'll do. And not necessarily what's best for me. So quite often I have taken decisions that are detrimental to me personally, but say it's benefited somebody else somehow. If, I'd often say that if I had my last £5 and I needed to buy food for myself, if there was a beggar in front of me, I will give that to the beggar, because I've got food at home, I've always thought that I'm so blessed, that I have so much, that there are so many people worse off than me, that I need to look out for other people.